All right, Becky, take it away.
Yeah, welcome everybody. My name is Becky. I'm your moderator for this session titled Addressing Suicidality, Talking Points, Safety Planning, and Resources. We currently have 24 participants, 25 participants joining us today. If you think you have found yourself in the wrong session, just go back to the conference homepage tab and then click on the title of the session you wish to attend. Reminder that the conference sessions will be on demand for your viewing for 60 days after the conference. Please do keep yourself muted until the appropriate time. Either Lainey or myself will ask you to unmute at that point. Please post questions using the chat feature. The icon for that can be found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And although we may not be able to get to all the questions, we'll do our best to summarize and respond to as many questions as possible. We recommend using the side-by-side speaker view with the buttons in the upper right hand of your Zoom screen. And for any technical issues with the conference, click on the email address link on the conference homepage to submit questions to be answered in real time by our production team. I am honored to introduce today's speaker, Lainey Bermanson. She is a licensed professional clinical counselor and the manager for the mental health support services and senior services programs at Jewish Family and Children's Service in Minneapolis. Lainey?
Thank you, Becky. So getting started here, assuming I'm doing the right thing with my Zooms. For anyone who knows me personally or professionally, you know that technology is not my thing. So I will start off this discussion today by saying I apologize in advance for anything that I do wrong with technology. I will try and keep myself in line, but things happen. So thank you all very much for joining us for the Mental Health Education Conference of 2020. This year has been quite a doozy, and I think for that reason, among all the other reasons that we come together annually for this conference, it is critically important that we come together as a community, support each other, and have these sometimes difficult discussions. So thank you very much for joining us. We are very fortunate today to have Miss Becky Sulkin as our moderator. She is also a mental health professional. So she is going to be kind of guiding the discussion. If you all have any feedback along the way or any questions along the way, she's going to be watching the chat for us all and interject if there are things that we need to address in a given moment. Also know that part of her role may be to refer you to the counseling support Zoom room, and that is totally okay. So thank you all again for being here today. My contact information is here on this first slide, and I happily will respond to any questions you have after today if you don't feel that now's the right time or things come up after the conference. So I know this has been a long day for many of you, and thank you for joining us. So again, there are mental health supports, including professional counselors and social workers available through the conference for anyone seeking additional support. We also have intake and resource counselors from JFCS who will be available to provide resources. I do have a site list at the very end of this presentation if you want to come back to it. Again, this is going to be available for the next 60 days. So anything that is shown here, you can find there for the next 60 days. Again, I welcome any questions that come up after the conference. All right, so a couple more housekeeping items. This presentation contains information that may elicit emotional responses. This is a very, very heavy topic, and it's very important. And I understand that this being the last presentation of the day, we might all feel a little bit fatigued from all the processing that we have had to do. So just know that there are people to support you, and it is important to talk to someone. There will be time specifically set aside at the end of this presentation to have a discussion or ask any questions. But if there's anything that comes up related to a particular slide or a topic, you can send those questions to the moderator, Becky, and we will see if we can address them as we go. So for those of you who I have not encountered professionally or out in the field, my background is working in community-based mental health, which has given me many opportunities to interface with clients and families and professionals, hospital systems, and the courts as it relates to suicide intervention. I don't plan to talk about the system level interventions like hospital and courts and all that. But if people have questions about that topic, I would welcome questions either at the end or via email at a later time. So what we will be covering today, today's discussion is meant to be a kind of a foundational overview of a little bit of data. I'm not a big numbers person, so not a ton of data. Identifying some of the risks and warning signs, also talking about some interventions and resources that might be available to those living with suicidal thoughts and those who support them. Much of the information presented today is a compilation of materials that's readily available from other sources. I have compiled it to make it easy to access for you all. These are resources that I have come across myself in my professional work, and I think they can be very helpful as we are kind of walking through these difficult times with our loved ones or experiencing suicidal thoughts ourselves. So let's see. Uh-oh. Now I can't get my slides to go. Is it going? It's not going. Okay, there we go. So again, talking about suicide in general and suicidal thoughts in particular is very challenging. Suicide touches us, most of us, very closely, much more closely than we would like it to. So here's just a little message about suicidal thoughts. Whatever's going on for you that has led to how you're feeling right now is unique to you or your loved one. But having suicidal thoughts is not. Please know that you or your loved one isn't alone, and lots of people experience thoughts of dying by suicide, but they have found a way through. Having suicidal thoughts can be overwhelming and frightening, and it can be very difficult to know what to do or how to cope. You or your loved one may be feeling depressed or anxious, or you may just feel really bad and not know what these feelings are. You may feel you're not contributing to society. You may feel you're not wanted or needed by anyone. You may be feeling hopeless about the future or powerless. And these are all thoughts. These things don't lead to behaviors necessarily. There is a break in that process, and it's important to remember that. It's also important to remember that that kind of pain doesn't need to be carried alone. Friends, family, teachers, coworkers, neighbors, crisis lines, mental health professionals, hairstylists, dentists, people in your natural support system can help you. There are people who are willing and able and available to you. All right, so throughout this presentation, there are a couple of videos, and I suspect this is the area in which I'm going to technologically fumble the most. So again, I apologize. This particular video I find very moving. For anyone who has not experienced suicidal thoughts, it brings to the forefront the depth of the pain that individuals contemplating suicide experience. I do want to warn you that this may elicit some emotional responses, which is absolutely okay. I want to remind you also that we do have mental health professionals available to you if you would like to utilize the drop-in support that is set up through Zoom. I think also it's important to pause here and share a little bit about how mental health professionals assess suicide risk. As I mentioned previously, suicidal thoughts are relatively common, but how helping professionals assess the urgency of suicidal thoughts is whether the person expresses they have a plan to die by suicide, whether they have a deeply felt intent to die by suicide, and also whether or not they have means to carry out whatever that plan might be. There are varying levels of response depending on where someone falls on each of these items. So we're going to hear a little bit about individuals who have shared their own experience of suicidal thoughts. They've written down those thoughts, and these are being read by strangers. So it is a deeply impactful video, and I will hopefully get it up and going. Becky, let me know if it's not playing for everybody, please.
We need some sound.
It's not playing the sound?
No.
Let's see. Well, maybe what I will do then is look for my citation page and pull up the video. I apologize for the delay. I suspected this would happen, so I appreciate your patience. All right, let's see. Okay. So as I pull this up, I will let you know that I'm going to be taking off the PowerPoint screen and shifting over to YouTube. So this video is available to anyone on YouTube. And again, at the very end of this presentation, the citation list has the video itself listed. So let's see if it's going.
You're still sharing the PowerPoint. There we go.
Yep.
That's opening up.
Is it? It is very slow. Okay, give me just a moment here. I'm going to stop share and start over again. All right, are you looking at a YouTube screen?
Go back to display settings and switch presenter view with.
I do apologize, everybody. It is like a somewhat comedic tragedy, my ineptitude when it comes to technology. All right, so display settings, got it. Swap.
There we go. So it looks like we're back at the PowerPoint slide. I do have the video pulled up on my screen. Do you want me to try to share?
Sure, if you're able.
Let's see.
Thank you. We'll stop share. Oh, still no sound. Okay. Well. That's okay. Becky, do you want to stop your share and I will try again to screen share?
Lainey,
Yes.
when you go to share your screen,
Yep.
there should be a pop-up window that comes up and you select which screen you want to share. At the bottom left of that pop-up, it should say enable computer audio.
Share computer sound.
Yes.
Click that button
Yes,
and also click the
go.
button that says share your screen with video.
And I am so glad you're here. All right, let me know if you all can hear this. We good?
I have wanted to commit suicide several times. Every time I write a new letter to my family before I attempt. I probably have about 30 or 40 letters stacked up somewhere because I'm too much of a coward to go through with it.
Oh. Oh, goodness. Now what did I do? So we get to learn new skills through this remote work period. One of mine that I still have lots of time to continue to learn on is Zoom. Okay.
I have wanted to commit suicide several times. Every time I write a new letter to my family before I attempt. I probably have about 30 or 40 letters stacked up somewhere because I'm too much of a coward to go through with it.
I felt like I was useless because that's what my parents told me, that I was a failure and a loser. I believed them. I felt like a burden to everyone. I just wanted to erase my existence. I think it was when I lost my friend to cancer that really saved me. It made me feel like it was selfish of me to choose to die when some people don't even have a choice.
I've always had this feeling that I'm not doing as much as I can in this world, or I'm not changing the world in any way. So what's the point in living?
The summer of my sophomore year, I tried to kill myself. The other kids at the hospital were some of the nicest people I've ever met. They supported me unlike my teachers and family who called me selfish and cowardly for my actions. I don't know how I feel about that word associated with suicide. I think it's kind of like a word used to shame rather than help.
I was sexually assaulted at the age of 15. People at my school blamed it all on me. After dealing with it for so long, I couldn't handle it anymore. So one night I went downstairs and took all the pills in the cabinet. I woke up in the hospital hooked up to a bunch of machines. To this day, my parents can't come to explain what happened. They get too choked up every time. If this person was in front of me, I would hug them, honestly, and just tell them that it's not their fault. She had no control over somebody else's actions. And it's awful that she's left with the repercussions and all of the feelings and the emotions. But I promise you it gets better. It gets better.
I come from a past with a lot of bullying. Most of my years in elementary and middle school was nothing but bullying, name-calling, being punched for no reason, and teachers telling me to grow up. This spiraled into me being depressed. After 8 years and 5 suicide attempts, I still feel like I'm no good to anyone.
The last part of it is really difficult to wrap your head around. To think that someone doesn't feel good enough. And I think we all kind of go through those situations. It's hard to think about. You make so many attempts at something and you're still here. You have a purpose for this world.
Okay. Thank you, Becky. All right. I don't know what shows up on your screen. Becky, do you see a map? Are you there?
I do not see the map.
Okay. I will share screen again, hopefully. Okay, let's see. All right, now I think I can bring us back. All right. There we go. Becky, are you looking at my title screen or a map now?
Not just yet.
What do you see?
I can see your screen, and I'm seeing the PowerPoint presentation with suicide prevention text line. Do you want me to try to share from my screen?
Are you seeing the map now?
Let's see.
Not yet?
Yes. Yes. So start
Increasing
slideshow from there.
Okay. All right. How we doing? Is it going?
It's not.
Well, it's good to interject some laughter in such a heavy topic, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So it's supposed to be resuming the slideshow. It is not yet?
Nope.
Okay.
I'd be happy to try to share it from mine if that would help.
Did that help?
It did. There it is.
Okay, we're in business. Sorry, everybody. So we have unfortunately seen an upward trend in executed suicide attempts. So this map is from 1999 to 2016. It demonstrates the increase in suicide attempts or suicide completions in the United States. And unfortunately, Minnesota is one of the states with the highest number of completed suicides. This is something that I think colloquially we are aware of, and at the same time it's important to really keep a sense of the people who are dying and the lives that are lost prematurely to suicide. So who is at risk for suicidal thoughts and behaviors? Becky, are you seeing that slide?
No, it did not advance, which I know we've had some issues with this in other sessions.
Well, I will just share screen per slide. Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
Yes. Who's at risk for suicidal thoughts?
Yep.
Okay. So I think for many of us, we recognize that suicide doesn't discriminate. People of all genders, ages, ethnicities can be at risk. Suicidal behavior is complex, and there's no single cause. Many different factors contribute to someone making a suicide attempt. But most at risk tend to share specific characteristics. So this is certainly not an exhaustive list. It's a list of things that are seen most commonly in professional discussions. So depression or other mental health disorders or substance abuse disorders. I think this one really needs to come with bold and an asterisk, because I think it's important that people know that fewer than 55% of completed suicides were carried out by people with pre-existing mental health conditions or diagnosed mental health conditions. So while we may see a high representation of folks who have these diagnoses who attempt suicide, it is certainly not the only contributing factor. Another risk factor would be medical conditions. So folks who are newly diagnosed with a medical condition, a terminal medical condition, or a chronic medical condition are at pretty high risk. Folks who experience chronic pain. This is something that is getting greater attention in the mental health and the medical world, understanding that chronic pain leads to a great deal of emotional and mental distress.
Lainey, I'm gonna just jump in and try to share the slides from my end. We're having some difficulty reading them.
Oh.
And while I do that, there's been had a couple of folks ask about any theories you may be aware of regarding why Minnesota has such a high percentage of deaths by suicide, as indicated by the map.
You know, that is a really important question to be asking. I don't have a theory necessarily. I do know that, and I think many people in Minnesota recognize that Minnesota is known for chemical health treatment. So there may be some connection there, but the increase in suicidality, I think, is really hard to nail down necessarily based on geographics. Any of these risk factors standing alone is probably not likely to lead someone to attempt suicide. It's oftentimes kind of a mixture of things in addition to life circumstances that become a little bit more challenging. So I wish I had an answer to that question, because then maybe we could go at the underlying causes. But yeah, it's an unfortunate statistic. Okay. So Becky, I am going to move to the next slide, which is risk factors continued. So if there is a family history of mental health disorders or substance abuse, people are at higher risk for suicidality. If there's a family history of suicide, that certainly puts people at higher risk. If there's any kind of family violence, including physical or sexual, emotional, financial abuse, all of that can contribute to suicidality. If there are firearms in the house, that is a risk factor as well. If someone has recently been released from prison or jail, that is a major life transition, and it is challenging for most people. So that also puts people at risk. Additionally, being exposed to other suicidal behavior, such as that of family members, peers, or celebrities. I think we are gaining awareness as a culture about the impact of suicide and those who might otherwise not be quite as vulnerable. You know, if it is popularized or the coverage on a celebrity's death by suicide does have the impact of having people think about it and think that there's some way to manage some of the difficulties that they are experiencing without seeking professional help. All right, I am moving to the next slide, which is breakdown of suicidal thoughts by demographic. Again, I'm definitely not a numbers person. I am a people person. So when I look at graphs like this, it's challenging for me. The people who are most at risk to have suicidal thoughts are youth. So people 18 to 25 years of age. The lowest age bracket is the 50 plus bracket, but I think it's also important that we put that in the context of understanding that completed suicides are more frequently done by those who are older adults. So the fatality rate of suicidal thoughts is much, much higher for older adults than it might be for anyone else who is captured by this graph. All right, I am moving on to slide 12, understanding suicidal thoughts. So I realized this afternoon that I mistitled this slide because it's not necessarily, this is not meant to capture the suicidal thoughts necessarily, but make sense of suicidal behaviors. So most suicidal behaviors are impulsive in nature. A recent study found that 13% of people who have survived a suicide attempt thought about the action for at least 8 hours. 70% reported they considered the action for less than an hour prior to the attempt, and the remaining thought about suicide only 5 minutes or fewer prior to their acting. It's important to note that most people don't want to die. The feelings of pain.
Slides aren't showing up.
They're not?
I'm resharing. Sorry about that.
Yeah, this remote existence is putting up some challenges for today. I apologize, everybody. Thank you very much for speaking up. All right, is everyone able to see understanding suicidal thoughts? Yep. Okay. So it's important to note that feelings of pain and hopelessness and overwhelm reach a tipping point, and people struggle to see that there are options available to them. Our job as people who support those who experience suicidal thoughts is to talk with them and slow them down and explore alternatives. For those who are experiencing suicidal thoughts, your job for yourself is to talk with someone. It can be anyone in your support network, in your professional network. If you are struggling, please share that with someone. All right, I am moving on to warning signs.
All right, one moment. Let's see. And I see that we do have a comment.
Sure.
So let me pop out of this for a minute, just so that I can see that. We have a piece of clarification that Kay King from NAMI would like to share. So I will, let me unmute Kay for a moment. Kay, I think you're unmuted.
I am, yeah. Lainey, you gave a statistic that I had a slide of the United States and I couldn't see the slide because of its size. Oh. But I just wanted to ask, you had said that Minnesota deaths by suicide were quite high. And I'll just tell you, I may have misunderstood and I just want you to clarify. So 2018 is the last year that suicide statistics are available. The state departments of health report them to the CDC, Center for Disease Control.
Yes.
And so in 2018, the last year we have figures, Minnesota ranked 40th in deaths by suicide. So we're really low compared to the other 50 states. Did I misunderstand? I just didn't catch it.
No, thank you, Kay, for the clarification. So the statistics in Minnesota are low relative to other states, and our completed suicide rates have increased over the period from 1999 to 2016. So that's what that figure was capturing, the increase by percentage of suicides that are completed in Minnesota. Thank you. Is there anything further? Okay.
No.
Okay.
And so we'll be resuming the slideshow from warning signs?
Yes, please. Slide 13.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Becky. So warning signs, these are the things that we as people who have folks in our lives who may be struggling with suicidal thoughts, these are some of the things that we can look out for. So again, none of these standing by themselves necessarily mean that suicidal behavior is imminent, but these are things to watch out for and really maybe start some conversations about if you observe them or experience them, or if you are experiencing them personally. These are things that may give an indication that it is time to talk to somebody about what's going on for you. So the first thing is talking about suicide. For example, making statements such as, I'm going to kill myself, I wish I were dead, or I wish I hadn't been born. So as you think about these statements, one rates at probably a 10 in terms of level of intensity, and it kind of goes down in levels of intensity with these statements. But I think if you are hearing people talk about, wishing they had never been born or saying the world would be better off without me, it is just as much an indicator that something is going on for the person in your life or something's going on for you, and that needs to be further explored. Getting the means to take one's life, such as buying a gun or stockpiling pills, that would certainly be an indication. Withdrawing from social contact and wanting to be left alone. This is something that I think is made that much more difficult by our current circumstances with the pandemic. People who have natural tendency to be a little bit isolated may further isolate, and we have to work that much harder to maintain contact with people. So it is important to still be watching out for that if you yourself experience the tendency to isolate, or if someone in your family or your friend group is isolating. Having mood swings, such as being emotionally high one day and deeply discouraged the next. Being preoccupied with death, dying, or violence. And feeling trapped or hopeless about a situation. I think there are many of us, given the current circumstances, who are feeling trapped and hopeless. And it's important to talk about it before that really hits kind of a tipping point for people. All right, Becky, I'm moving on to slide 14, which would be warning signs continued.
All right, let's see if I can join you there.
Would it be helpful if I try again to do my screen sharing?
Sure, yeah.
All right, let's see what I can make happen. What do you see?
I see warning signs continued. Let's, why don't we start from current slide?
All right. How's it look?
Waiting for it to enter full screen. Are you able to just click on from current slide, or does it always give you that secondary option?
It gives me the secondary option.
Okay.
It's showing right now.
Is it?
Yeah.
So we've got warning signs.
Yes, it's just not in the full slide view.
Okay. Well,
It's okay the way it is.
all right. Thank you. So warning signs continued. This is another. Uh-oh. Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. The increasing use of alcohol or drugs. This is something that has implications both for the level of risk or like the identifiable risk, but also for the intensity of risk, because people who are under the influence of alcohol or drugs have impaired judgment and may have increased impulsivity. So this is definitely something that if you're seeing this in someone or you're experiencing it yourself, it's something to really take a close look at and take very seriously. Changing in one's normal routine, including eating or sleeping patterns, engaging in risky or self-destructive behavior, such as using drugs or driving recklessly, giving away belongings or getting affairs in order when there's no other logical explanation for this. We see this somewhat frequently in the mental health department at JFCS, where we have clients who are kind of perpetually in flux, and they will give away their belongings, they'll make plans, and those are things really to be taken very seriously. Saying goodbye to people as if they won't be seen again, and developing personality changes or being severely anxious or agitated, particularly when experiencing some of the other warning signs. Okay, so the next slide is a video. I'm going to cross my fingers that everything works properly for this. Oh, that's not the right one. Okay, here we go. And Becky, let me know if you get audio from this, please. Okay, so certainly those are some of the things we've talked about already in this discussion. I included this video for anyone who might want to share this information out. I think this is a very poignant way to convey some of these messages without having to do it through a PowerPoint. So again, this is cited at the end of the presentation, so feel free to utilize it. Okay, Becky, are we on the what can we do slide?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. Okay. So what can we do if a person close to us is thinking about suicide? There are part of this discussion that we're having today is giving the opportunity to look at some of those entry points to having discussions about suicide. It really is an act of bravery on both sides to have these discussions, and they are certainly so critically important. So here are some of the things that we can start with. And I think for anyone who might be engaging someone else in a conversation about suicidality, it really is important that you understand that you have to be direct. The more we kind of do the Minnesota nice and sugarcoat things, the less of an opportunity somebody has to be forthcoming about what's going on for them. So it really is helpful to have some of these talking points and know that it's okay to be direct with people, and know that you are not planting a seed that wasn't already there. You're just opening a door so they can walk through and let you know what's going on for them. So, if you have someone who has experienced a major life change, a relationship breakup, a job loss, job change, financial hardships, you can ask them, how are you coping with what's happening in your life? You can ask, do you ever feel like giving up? That may not be the first question you ask in a conversation like this, but if you're out to coffee with a friend and they're struggling, it's okay to ask. You can also ask if people are thinking about dying, the person, your loved one, your friend, your family member, whether they're having these thoughts. They may not volunteer them, but again, if you open the door, they may very well walk through it, and that gives you an opportunity potentially to save their life. You can ask if the person is thinking about hurting themselves, if they're thinking about suicide. You can ask if they've ever thought about suicide before, or if they've tried to harm themselves before. It is a hard thing for people to share if they have engaged in self-harming behavior, whether it's an actual suicide attempt or self-harming behaviors of any other kind. There's a lot of shame and a lot of guilt that comes along with it. But again, if you are asking the question, that demonstrates that you care enough to ask. You can ask if they have thought about committing suicide or dying by suicide. You can ask when they might do it, if they do have the thoughts to do that. You should certainly ask if they have access to weapons or things that can be used as a weapon, or engaging in self-harm. Okay. What you can do for yourself if you're experiencing suicidal ideation. One of the most critical things to do is engage with someone else. That provides an anchor to your social network. It gives the opportunity for people to support you. So don't spend the night alone if you're feeling unsafe, if you're feeling suicidal. Also, cutting ties with people who are abusing you. One of the risk factors that we noted earlier is abuse of all kinds: emotional, sexual, physical, financial. All of that can contribute to suicidality. Making a list of accomplishments. So reminding yourself of the things that you have done really well. And I can assure you, even if you struggle to come up with the list exists. You just have to look. Practicing positive mantras. So reminding yourself that I will get through this. These are thoughts. Thoughts are transient. Reminding yourself that you want to live. Reminding that these are things that you can overcome independently or with the help of professionals or friends or family. Finding a therapist. If you don't have a therapist, you can certainly call your insurance company. If you don't have insurance, you can call Hennepin County and get medical assistance started up if you're eligible. If the situation is urgent, please call COPE, which is the emergency psychiatric response in Hennepin County, or 911. It is absolutely never the wrong thing to be seeking help. If things feel unsafe, please utilize those. And then save a spot in your heart and your mind for hope. Every day is a new day. And if you give yourself the opportunity, you get to have a new day.
Do you have the phone number for COPE?
Yes, I do. I apologize. I didn't put it in there. I will put it in the chat right now.
Oh, wait, you do have it.
It's on this slide right there.
You do, okay.
There we go. Yes. So one of the tools that we have, or a couple of the tools that we have available to us if someone is experiencing suicidality, this website, Stop Suicide Today, has an assessment tool both for people who are experiencing suicidal thoughts and people who care for someone who might be experiencing suicidal thoughts. So again, tools are tools. If a situation is truly urgent, then it's important to reach out to either COPE or 911. But if this is something that is you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, this is a really nice tool to help assess kind of the level of urgency to things and help if you're the person experiencing suicidal thoughts. It might help in starting those discussion topics. Okay, so some of the other tools available to us are safety planning and crisis planning, which they sound very similar, and sometimes the forms look very similar if you're going to pull these off the internet, which I did, and I apologize, some of the images are not so great. But regardless of whether it's a person's first time experiencing suicidality or they live with chronic suicidality or have survived past attempts, it's critical to have a plan in place to address the needs and provide supports for the person who's suffering. So some of the more common intervention strategies include safety planning, crisis planning, and safety contracting, and we'll get into the differences of the three of those. So in terms of safety plans, these are a tool most frequently used in the moment. If someone has expressed suicidal thoughts, they have a plan or intent, and they can be written with future events in mind, knowing that people who experience suicidal thoughts, it's common for them to experience suicidal thoughts over a period of time. Usually these are not standalone events where these thoughts come up. So these are helpful for people who are experiencing suicidal thoughts in the moment to really try and capture what's going on for them and how they might recognize some of the risks and what they can do to mitigate those risks going forward. So the basic question is, what can I do to stay safe today? And to go back to some of the other items from earlier, reaching out to a friend, not staying alone overnight, making sure that whatever means that come to mind for suicidal behaviors are not immediately available. So those are some of the things that would be on a safety plan. They do focus on immediate interventions, and they may include an assessment of level of intervention required. For each person, it is important to have a sense of what their experience of suicidality looks like. One of my very dearest friends lives with chronic suicidality, and she has kind of a scale of how she's feeling today and what the level of risk is. So that can be really helpful. This document is one that I have made available in the worksheet section for this breakout session. This is what we're utilizing in the mental health support services program right now for a crisis plan. So folks who come to us for support with mental health needs would fill this out with their case manager, social worker, and just have this available to themselves at all times. It's not super in-depth, as you can see. It just identifies specific people who might be able to help in a time of crisis. So this bottom half here talks about some of the external supports that someone might have. The top section here is probably people that the client or the person who's experiencing suicidality probably already knows the person, but they may not know the number. So this is something that I think is really helpful.
And Lainey, that's a bit challenging to read in this format. Will these templates be available in the resources or sent out afterwards?
Yes, so this particular form will be in the resources. The other ones, I apologize if they're blurry. I will kind of just go through them. These are not made immediately available because these were not products of JFCS, but this one is available to anyone who needs them.
Excellent. And do just want to mention that we are about 6 minutes from ending.
Oh my.
We do have a very great question in the chat saying, as a family member with a loved one living with serious mental illness, in the event of suicidal threats and refusal to go to the ER, what can the family expect if they call the mobile crisis team?
So that is really an excellent question. And right now, given the pandemic, the response from the mobile crisis team does look a little bit different than it ordinarily would. So right now, COPE is not able to go out to people's homes. They still do telephone assessments. They go through the standard assessment that they would in person with the person experiencing suicidal thoughts or is engaging in suicidal behavior. Because COPE is not able to go out right now, if you feel there's a true emergency, certainly call 911. The best thing that we can do in a situation like that is get professional level assistance. It's unfortunate that the circumstances are what they are in terms of COPE not being able to go out, but if your loved one is experiencing suicidal thoughts and they're willing to speak on the phone with COPE, oftentimes just that break in the moment of engaging in suicidal behavior can be enough to save their life. So everyone has to exercise their best judgment in those critical situations. If it feels truly urgent, then really call 911. Don't hesitate at all in terms of reaching out to emergency services. That's what they're there for, because it's an emergency.
And if folks are not in Hennepin County, the mental health crisis number that will connect in all 87 Minnesota counties, including by cell phone, is ** 274747. So I will put that in the chat. Thank you, Kay, for that addition. It should work 24/7 by cell in all Minnesota counties.
Yes, thank you, Becky, for that. And actually, it looks as though we won't have time to get to the video, but there is a video at the very end of this presentation that gives kind of a behind the scenes look at what happens when people text into that line. Who is responding? What is the process? I think it's really helpful to have kind of a sense of what's going on the other side of those text messages. So I do sincerely welcome anyone to take a peek at that video if you have time and interest to do so. So,
and Lainey, can you, do you have any tips for someone who is calling 911 in regard to concern about their loved ones? Because as we know, unfortunately, folks with mental illness have often encountered police violence when seeking help. So any tips on that front?
Yeah, certainly. That is an excellent thing to bring forward, and I hadn't thought to bring it to the presentation, so thanks, Becky. Yes, if you are calling 911 as a result of an urgent situation with someone who is living with a known mental illness, it is absolutely imperative that you let the 911 dispatcher know that this person is living with whatever their mental health condition might be. It's also important that they know whether the person is on medication and whether they're adherent to that medication regimen. If there's any sort of precipitating event, like a death in the family or a major job loss or anything that might really put them at risk, it's important for the emergency responders to have a sense of what is going on for the person so they can really engage in that situation, not in a reactive way. They can be proactive by saying, you know, I understand that this is a really hard time for you and we're here to help. Because oftentimes emergency responders are responding to an emergency. So as human beings, they have kind of the natural endorphin and fight or flight response that the rest of us do. So if your loved one is acutely unwell and may react strongly to the police, it's important for them to know that as well. Was that it for questions right at the moment?
I would just add as well that you can ask for a crisis intervention trained officer. I see many folks in the session are familiar with that term. So they have at least 40 hours of training in crisis management. And also you want to be sure to let emergency services know that your loved one does not have a weapon if that is the case.
Yes, thank you.
I speak all over the state for an interim voice program, and most of what I do is to go to trainings for first responders, police, EMS, fire, and people that are first responders are 6 times more likely to die by suicide than the rest of the population. But I just want to let you know, a lot of counties around the state, first responders are getting that training. And it's a 40-hour training that they go through. It's a whole week.
Yes. Thank you, Joelle. Also, in the metro area, there are a number of police departments who now have social workers embedded on their teams. So regardless of what city you may be calling in from, you can certainly inquire if there's someone who is either CIT trained or if there's a social worker on staff at that particular police department. So yes, thank you.
And Lainey, we are just about at the time to wrap up, and I do want to make sure that people are able to attend the conference closing. Do you have any last thoughts that you would like to share?
Well, let me just take a quick peek through the rest of this. I think we covered most of the most pertinent information, but I think the last thing I would like to finish with is to take time to come back to this stuff. If someone has expressed to you or you have expressed to someone else that you're experiencing suicidality or they have come to you to say that they have, it's important to circle back to it. You know, these things, as I mentioned before, happen over a period of time for many people. And just because a situation may have resolved in a given moment doesn't mean that those thoughts necessarily go away. So as a caring support person, it's important that we engage our loved one in further conversations. And as a person who lives with suicidal thoughts, it's important to continue those conversations as well to get the support you need, get any sort of professional interventions you might need, and know that it's okay. It's okay to talk about this stuff. So
can we get a copy of your PowerPoint, Lane?
I can certainly put it in the resources, I believe. I'll have to double check with our staff member who puts together the conference, but I think I should be able to do that. But this will be available for the next 60 days for sure if you come back to the link. But I can try and make it available for other people to save as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lainey, and to all of our participants. I do want to remind you to please be sure to fill out evaluations on the conference homepage. Everyone who completes them will be automatically entered for a prize. And now we ask that you go directly to the closing ceremony. There is no break between this breakout and the closing. So please do proceed directly to that. You can find the link on the homepage. Again, thank you all so much.
Thank you.